So here we have the first of the flipped classroom lessons that you are going to take notes on what you see here, just like if I were doing it in class. I'm not going to give as long a pauses as what we usually have in class to write things down, so you'll simply have to pause the video yourself, and you can take as long or as short as you want, and then make sure you upload some copy of your notes to Google Classroom so that you can prove that, yes, in fact, you took notes. So this first one is about nuclear war. And while we'll go over a little bit in class, this is going to be too big to cover in what we want to do. Therefore, we're going to take a look at what exactly happens in an atomic or nuclear attack so that you know what can be done and why we all worked so hard not to go to nuclear war. So let's start with a couple key terms. The key term of the era is mutually assured destruction, better known as MAD, because it's a mad idea to even try. Whoever shoots first dies second. There is no winner in a nuclear war. There are only losers. There are only the counts of the dead and how much has been destroyed. There is no one who wins. And so whoever starts it simply dies second. There is no one who survives in any way that's recognizable to the world we know now. And that mutually assured destruction is therefore, it causes deterrence. Don't use your weapons because then the other side will use theirs. Again, who shoots first dies second. And if you can deter your enemy from using their weapons, then you are winning. Now, there is a difference between atomic bombs and nuclear bombs. And it goes back to what we talked about with how atoms are split. There are two different types. Fission splits an atom of uranium into smaller atomic particles, and that releases a tremendous amount of energy. The other one, that is an atomic bomb. Fission is atomic, and that's what was used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The other, a nuclear bomb, is done with fusion, forcing hydrogen atoms together. This is the basic power of the universe. This is what happens inside stars, as hydrogen atoms are forced together under tremendous heat and pressure to form helium atoms. And when that happens, there is a tremendous amount of energy released. We are literally taking a bit of the center of the sun and releasing it on the Earth for a fraction of a second. That's the power we're talking about. And we deliver those weapons using ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. These are the missiles that can go from the United States to Soviet Union and vice versa. And they are the key delivery of nuclear weapons to this very day.
Ever since the first nuclear weapons test in the deserts of New Mexico and the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nuclear weapons have become significantly more powerful. Since the first test in New Mexico by the United States in 1945, 2,475 nuclear weapons have been detonated across the globe. Over 85% of those detonations have come from only two countries, however, the United States and the former Soviet Union. Only two of those thousands of detonations were ever used in a war, the ones dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II by the United States. But those bombs were very small compared to modern weaponry. The Hiroshima bomb produced an explosion of 15 kilotons, or 15,000 tons worth of TNT. The bomb dropped on Nagasaki had an explosion of 21 kilotons, but how much bigger can nuclear weapons possibly get? The answer is, terrifyingly, much, much bigger. The largest nuclear weapon currently in the United States arsenal is the B-83, which can produce a blast of 1.2 megatons. To understand the scale from here out, 1 megaton is equal to 1 million tons of TNT, and that is equal to 1,000 kilotons. Remember that the Hiroshima blast was just 15 kilotons, so that means that the B-83 produces a blast 80 times more powerful than that. What I've been showing on this scale is only the size of the mushroom cloud that the bombs produced, so to further add to this scale, we're going to place the size of Mount Everest here and the average altitude of a commercial airliner that you would normally fly on here. So, the Castle Bravo bomb is the largest nuclear weapon ever tested by the United States. It produced a blast of 15 megatons, or about 1,000 times the scale of Hiroshima. But even that pales in comparison to the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated. In October 1961, the Soviet Union created the largest man-made explosion ever in human history when they detonated this device, known as the Tsar Bomba, here over this territory known as Novaya Zemlya. The bomb detonated with an astounding force of 50 megatons, or about 3,333 Hiroshima blasts. It was so powerful that it almost destroyed the plane that dropped it, shattered windows as far away as Norway and Finland, and the shock waves created by the bomb circled around the entire Earth 3 times. But this test was actually just a scaled-down version of what was theoretically possible. Although never tested, the Soviets did have plans to create a bomb that would be twice as powerful as even the Tsar Bomba, a bomb so powerful that it would have produced a mind-boggling 100 megaton blast, or about 6,666 Hiroshima blasts altogether. To get another sense of scale, let's imagine that Times Square in New York City would be the epicenter of these blasts. You can test this stuff out yourself on the website NukeMap after watching this video. I'll provide a link for it after the end, but let's see the results first. First off, we're going to show the size of this detonation, which was caused by the recent North Korean test in 2013. Following this, here's the size of the Hiroshima detonation, which isn't really that much bigger, but let's move on to the B-83 bomb that we were talking about. As you can see, it would affect a much larger area than the Hiroshima bomb, but moving on past that to the Castle Bravo test, we can see how it truly dwarfs everything before it. But even that blast is incredibly tiny when we move on towards the Tsar Bomba as seen here. And then finally for our scale, we move on to how large the blast from the theoretical 100 megaton version of the Tsar Bomba would be. The blast would be so powerful, this is what the blast radius would look like if you were observing it from the International Space Station. So the question then becomes, should any of this really worry you? How many nuclear weapons exist today anyway? Well, in total, there are estimated to be around 15,600 nuclear weapons in the world currently, enough to destroy the entire planet dozens of times over. But only 9 countries control that stockpile, and 92% of those weapons are controlled by only the United States and Russia. The other 8% of the global nuclear arsenal is controlled in descending order of numbers by France, China, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea. Israel is, however, highly secretive about its nuclear program and has never publicly confirmed nor denied the existence of their nukes. It's just one of those things where everybody knows that they have them, but nobody really comes out and says so. Unless your name happens to be Mordecai Vanunu, a man who did reveal details about Israel's nuclear program and spent 18 years in prison, including over 11 years in solitary confinement. Also interesting to note, South Africa used to be in possession of 6 nuclear weapons because the past apartheid regime was afraid of the 79% of the population that couldn't vote and communists trying to overthrow their government, but they eventually agreed to dismantle all of them, which makes South Africa the only country to ever acquire nuclear weapons and then voluntarily get rid of them. Well, unless you don't count Ukraine, Belarus, or Kazakhstan, which all had nuclear weapons for a brief amount of time after they declared their independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. Ukraine is particularly awkward because after their independence they found themselves in possession of over 5,000 nuclear weapons, which would make Ukraine for a brief period the world's 3rd largest nuclear power and probably one of the most powerful countries on Earth as a result. They agreed to hand them all over to Russia in exchange for a super serious promise that nobody would violate their territory or borders in the future, and we all know how that turned out. As a result of that happening, it's doubtful that other countries would be thrilled to ever give up their nuclear weapons in the future.
Yeah, the Crimean Peninsula is certainly a sore point for Ukraine. So, what exactly are we talking about then? Well, we're talking about mass paranoia. Surprise nuclear attack could come at any time. Day or night did not matter. Bombers could fly over the North Pole to strike us. Missiles could land just 30 minutes after launch. Submarine-based weapons could get to a city on the east or west coast in as little as 10 minutes. Constant nuclear threat. It was there at all times, day and night. And so the Civil Defense Agency was put with trying to prepare people for nuclear attack, and it also worked with other related emergencies. This would work in hurricanes and tornado situations, but really it was for nuclear attack. Building bomb shelters, stocking enough food, having a plan if and when the nuclear attack came. So let's talk about what actually happens in a nuclear explosion, and this is where it gets incredibly interesting. So first off, the detonation usually happens just above a target. An airburst has a downward pressure wave that does a lot more damage over a lot further distance than launching it at ground level. At ground level, the dirt itself absorbs a whole lot of that impact of the nuclear explosion. It sends a tremendous amount of dirt into the atmosphere, which is highly radioactive and can poison neighborhoods for hundreds and hundreds of miles depending on the wind, but you don't get as much surface level damage. So a lot of times you get an airburst above the target. Then comes the flash. This flash of light is so bright that it can literally melt your retinas. You will be blinded if you are looking at this when it happens. And no, you don't know where it's coming from or where it's going to happen. You are simply unlucky enough that you were looking at the blast when it happens. You will be blinded if you're close enough. And by close enough, I mean a few thousand miles. Then comes the shockwave. Traveling at over 200 miles per hour, it will knock you down. It will knock buildings down. It is an explosive pressure wave that, if close enough, will liquefy your organs inside your body. And that is what actually kills you and what does a lot of the damage. Then comes the fireball. The fireball is hot enough to vaporize things for miles around. It will evaporate people. There were people in Hiroshima who were left as merely shadows on brick walls. There was nothing left of them but a shadow. You actually boil from the inside out. It's your bone marrow that boils first. And so as that's expanding, and this all happens in a brief instant. I can't imagine it's long enough to even feel it or to feel pain from it, but it is intensely hot. Then as the mushroom cloud rises, it's taking a lot of hot air with it, and as that does it, it actually creates a suction back towards the explosion, because air has to replace the air that's rising so high into the atmosphere. So you get that shock wave out, and then wind gusts that go back inward. Then comes the radiation. The radiation is emitted in all directions. It is carried by particles, some so small you can't see those particles, but they are still emitting this radiation. And these protons being flung out in all directions are punching holes in your DNA. And so as your body heals and grows and replaces cells, it now has DNA that is incomplete and misreads it, and that will cause many, many cancers as your body tries to adjust. That's if it has survived the initial blast of radiation, which will rupture your cells. It breaks down cell walls until you begin to break down. Then there's the fallout. And fallout is radiation that lingers on particles, raining down from the atmosphere from that initial explosion, trapped in the topsoil, trapped in any biomatter that survived. This radiation can last for years, continuing to shoot out those proton alpha particles, causing health problems for decades, if not centuries. This is intense. But the thing that scares me the most is the electromagnetic pulse. When a bomb is airburst, it lets out a massive high voltage wave of electrons that will fry electronics for miles around. And they found in testing that this is very effective from miles up, that if you were to detonate a nuclear device 100 miles above Iowa, you would knock out the electrical grid of the entire continental United States. That this EMP will knock out everything. Every cell phone, every car, is how much of it uses electricity and computers these days. It will take out every computer, every light bulb. Nothing will last. Within a snap, we are back in the 1800s. And if anything, that is even scarier, as people will be trapped in elevators. Planes will fall from the sky. Cars will be dead all over the road, just clogging the escape routes. everything stops. It's terrifying. After a nuclear attack, radiation lingers in lethal doses for hours in the dust. And it lingers at dangerous levels for days. It is said that you should, according to FEMA, that you should stay underground or in shelter for 2 weeks. You need to have enough materials for 2 weeks to survive a nuclear blast if you survive the initial attack. And most people will survive the initial attack. It's afterward. It's the radiation that lingers. It's the food that's too contaminated to eat, or the eating of contaminated food and water that will kill far more than the initial blast. That radiation will linger at unhealthy levels for weeks through years. And if there are enough nuclear bombs that go off and throw enough dust, dirt, and debris from the ground into the atmosphere, we get what's called nuclear winter. And this is the truly scary thing, that this dust will block out the sun and potentially stay airborne for years. It blocks out the sun, which means temperatures drop, creating an ice age, which means plants can't live. And if plants can't live, animals can't eat the plants. And if animals can't eat the plants, then we starve. We could kill the planet, not in the initial attack, not from the radiation, but from the dust thrown up into the air. Nuclear winter is something that is absolutely terrifying, as it could cause 100 years of darkness on the planet's surface and kill off everything. This is a planet-ending event. Look at the destruction. This is a Soviet test, and I think the Russian that's spoken over top makes it so much more eerie. Watch for the shockwave to actually hit the camera, how far it is.
Какое-то количество людей находилось ближе. Одного солдата, находившегося в канаве, засыпало песком, и один солдат погиб. В одном из близлежащих сел население было все.
You see the shockwave hit it?
Зданий.
How far away it was? This is what it does to a typical town.
Взрыв выглядел из города Курчатова, центра Семипалатинского полигона. Ослепительная вспышка и ударная волна сотрясли город. В домах вылетели все стекла. Это кадры из фильма, который был снят специально для показа руководству страны.
And how do we know all this information? Well, we tested it. And in the Nevada desert, we put together whole towns just to see what happens in a nuclear blast.
Survival Town.
Atom test measured a model village in the Nevada desert against the awesome power of nuclear energy. Buildings of various materials went up. $1 million worth of equipment was installed, including lifelike mannequins, and tons of food to measure the contamination caused by radiation. The big dolls were Survival Town's sole inhabitants. Tanks took part in their first atomic maneuvers, some less than a mile away, the closest yet in any test. Nearly 6,000 persons participated, including troops sheltered by trenches. Many cameras in many locations filmed the single blast.
See the heat, then the shock wave, and then the suction comes back in on it.
wreckage in the desert held vital information on how to survive an enemy attack. With Geiger counters to check the radiation, experts assessed the damage. An aluminum building was left a gaping wreck. Concrete or cinder blockhouses weathered the blast best. This one was less than a mile away. Survival Town's electric wires had become a twisted, tangled mass. Demonstrating the importance of civil defense preparedness, the elaborate exercises proved survival is possible, offering new hope to all who live in the shadow of the atomic age.
And while we have stopped testing nuclear weapons themselves in all status because of treaties, we haven't stopped testing their delivery systems. And it gets even sneakier. That's 30 minutes, and that would be at its target. Submarine-based launches, you have no idea where they are until they launch those missiles. Imagine that parked off the coast. 10 minutes to target. 10 minutes to the end of the world as we know it. So there are two types of nuclear war. Full-scale nuclear war, this is the world-destroying stuff. This is one country launches everything, another country launches everything they have in retaliation. Whoever shoots first dies second, mutually assured destruction. But the generals insisted that a limited nuclear war could happen. That nuclear weapons could be used on a standard battlefield like any other weapon, as though this is just a new type of grenade or bazooka. And, well, there was one. Now, neither of these have been used, obviously, in any kind of combat, because what's the reality? As soon as your troops get nuked, what do you think that army's going to do? They're going to nuke back. Just about everyone with a brain thinks that, yeah, limited nuclear war is not a possibility, but that doesn't mean they didn't try. And that involves some of my favorite ideas in history as far as just how absurd these are. Starting with Atomic Annie, the nuclear cannon. There's the heat, the flash, traveling at the speed of light, obviously. Then the shockwave is approaching the speed of sound. And incredibly, oh yeah, I'm sure they're fine. No big deal. That matches the Hiroshima blast of 15 kilotons from a cannon, but it gets smaller.
The stakes couldn't be higher. It's the height of the Cold War. The Davy Crockett, the world's smallest nuclear warhead with a short range and questionable accuracy, is about to be test-fired for the first time in front of America's most powerful leaders.
So luckily for them, it went off without a hitch. The weapon fired, its warhead traveled a little less than 2 miles and exploded like it was expected to.
The little fella lived up to its name. Its blast barely lit up the sky.
If you've seen other nuclear tests, it doesn't look that impressive. It's a little poof of smoke and then you see a little mushroom cloud. The Hiroshima bomb, for instance, was about 13.5 kilotons. So 13,500 tons of TNT equivalency. The Nagasaki bomb was about 20 kilotons. Davy Crockett had the explosive power of about 20 tons of TNT. Talking about a weapon system that, at its very height, is 1,000 times less powerful than the bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki.
20 tons may be small, but not bad from a firearm that can be launched by 3 men. Was it worth the money in the end?
Well, you could say yes and you could say no to this question. People always look back at the Cold War and say, oh, we spent trillions of dollars on all these weapon systems we never used. The other side is that we spent trillions of dollars on weapon systems that prevented war. Right? Because they were so advanced, because they were so potentially destructive, then we didn't fight World War III. And so, yes, absolutely, it's worth the money.
The Davy Crockett was removed from Europe in 1967 and officially retired from use in 1971. Today, the Davy Crockett is an amazing relic of the Cold War, a testament to American engineering and one weapon that crews would have to think twice about before firing.
And we would continue to test these in military contexts, which included exposing American soldiers to high doses of radiation. How would we use this in a limited attack? Well, it would have looked something like this. And off they go to attack what would be a softened target. The absurdity of it all. It's incredible. This is a map of all the nuclear tests that were done. You can see Nevada, 935. This is a little out of date. They list one for North Korea. There's been a few more since. But one of the most popular was in the South Pacific. As you can see, a number of atolls there. Bikini Atoll was one of the early popular ones. And indeed, the bikini bathing suit is named for it. He's figured it'd be something hot and new as a nuclear topic. He liked the name bikini. Clearly, it's stuck. And what we did with these attacks and the native populations is awful. Just awful. This is from a documentary called The Forgotten Bomb on Amazon. And what we did to the people there in relation to these tests is appalling. I don't know why I don't have audio on it. Well, we'll have to skip that and come back to it. But long story short, we did not evacuate all the people that we should have evacuated, and that caused birth defects and women unable to conceive children for a very long time. And basically we wrote it off because these were simply islanders and not white Americans, and we really didn't care. It's extremely troubling. But this happened throughout the country. Cold War in schools. This era, I'm sure, will be looked back on as the era of the active shooter drill. Just like we have fire drills and tornado drills today, back then they had duck and cover drills, which were preparing for a nuclear attack. And this is something we'll address in the classroom. I'm not going to ruin this and leave it to you guys yet. So stay tuned for this if you're getting ahead on it. If not, I hope you enjoyed Duck and Cover. Now, what does this paranoia do to everyone? Now, this is completely my theory that all of this angst of nuclear war happening and global thermonuclear holocaust possible at any point in any day made some of the best art and music and movies of in centuries, because art is how we deal with pain. But that is my own theory, and it isn't really backed up by thing. But it does also create a very weird sense of humor about this all. And so I want to start with a song by Tom Lehrer, who really, he was one of those guys who got it and was thoroughly sarcastic. Let's enjoy.
Every great war produces its great hit songs. And after each war, we like to gather around the piano or the guitar and play these songs. We enjoy the songs because they remind us of how much we enjoyed the war. Now, World War III is almost upon us, as you know, by popular demand, it seems. And it occurred to me that if any songs are going to come out of World War III, we better start writing them now. So I have one here. This is a song that some of the boys will have sung to their mothers as they will have gone bravely off to World War III. There's one reference in here that I should explain. There is a reference to our leading television news commentators, Chet Huntley and David Brinkley. I feel that this is appropriate because, as you know, World War III will be the first World War to be seen on television. And I certainly hope that we all have color television by then. So long, Mom, I'm off to drop the bomb, so don't wait up for me. But while you swelter down there in your shelter, you can watch me on your TV. While we're attacking frontally, watch Brinkley and Huntley describing contrapuntally the cities we have lost. No need for you to miss a minute of the agonizing Holocaust. Yeah! Little Johnny Jones, he was a U.S. pilot, and no shrinking violet was he. He was mighty proud when World War III was declared. He wasn't scared, no siree. And this is what he said on his way to Armageddon. So long, Mom, I'm off to drop the bomb, so don't wait up for me. But though I may roam, I'll come back to my home, although it may be a pile of debris. Remember, Mommy, I'm off to get a commie, so send me a salami and try to smile somehow. I'll look for you when the war is over, an hour and a half from now.
So what things do I think you took away from that? Well, first off, the ending, I'll look for you when the war is over an hour and a half from now. Why so short? Not even, by Christmas with like every other war we've fought. Well, once one side launches their bombs, the other side launches their bombs, that's it. So the war will be over quite quickly, and it'll simply be going back to your homes, even though they may be a pile of debris. There's nothing left. You'll watch on the television all the cities that have been lost. It's very dark humor, and that helped a lot of people cope. But it's not just music that was affected. I'm going to pause this for a second to set it up. So this is
spread out in a semicircle.
So let's look at a couple films. The first is, this is the very, very beginning of a film called Red Dawn. It's actually Charlie Sheen's first movie. And It's a really good movie. So the plot of the film is generally a Soviet invasion happens through Alaska. And as they're working their way down, we focus on a high school in Colorado and how they survive. They become part of the resistance. These high schoolers will flee into the hills and lead part of the resistance against the Soviets. Well, this is the opening scene of the film, and see what you think.
Now, the great hunt would always begin with the army spread out in a semicircle, I would say about the size of Rhode Island. Then they would ride forward, driving everything before them. Beast, men, even bugs. Now, the ends would kind of close in to form a shrinking circle. And everything within that circle panicked to get out. So when the Mongols could see each other, they had worked themselves up into a pretty good frenzy. Now, when this killing started, it lasted for days, weeks, even months. And it went on until the young son of the Khan asked his father, that the last creature alive, be allowed to go free. Well now, my friend. Well now.
Oh, check it out. All right. Look pretty cool though, man.
I would say they were way off course. This is very unusual.
You do something, Mr. Teasdale.
What's going on, my friend?
And off they go to survive and lead the resistance. That's the opening scene, and well, it's fantastic. The new movie, the new version is awful, but this, with parental permission, I highly recommend Red Dawn. It's fantastic. If that movie comes on, I'm losing the next couple hours to watch it. Another one that comes out around the same time is War Games, and it tackles a very different idea. If people know what happens in a nuclear exchange, and it were to start, what happens if people refuse to launch? What happens if the human element stops mutually assured destruction? And that's really what this movie tackles. This is the opening scene to it.
Got a red light, sir.
What on?
Number 8, warhead alarm.
Give a thump with your finger. Alarm reset.
dropkick with a red dash alpha message in 2 parts. Break. Red dash alpha.
Stand by to
red
copy
dash
message.
alpha.
Standing by.
Romeo, Oscar, November, Charlie, Tango, Lima, Alpha. Authentication 22040 Delta Lima.
I have a valid message. Stand by to authenticate.
I agree with authentication also, sir.
Enter launch code.
Entering launch code.
Launch order confirmed.
Target selection complete. Time on target sequence complete. Yield selection complete.
Begin countdown. T-minus 60.
All right, let's do it. Insert launch key.
Stand by. Launch key inserted.
Roger. On my mark. Rotate launch key to set. 3, 2, 1. Mark.
T-minus 50.
Roger, that's set. Sir.
T-minus 40.
Enable missiles.
Number 1 enabled. 2 enabled. 3 enabled. 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. All missiles enabled.
Minus 30.
Get me wing command post on your direct
That's
line.
not the correct procedure, Captain.
SAC. Try SAC headquarters on the HF.
That's not the correct procedure.
Screw the procedure. I want somebody on the phone before I kill 20 million people.
T-minus 20.
I got nothing here. They might have been knocked out already.
Right. On my mark, rotate launch keys to launch.
Roger, ready to go to launch.
14.
13, 12, 11.
7. 6. 5.
Sir, we have a launch order.
3.
Put your hand on the keys,
2,
sir.
1. Launch.
Sir, we are at launch. Turn your keys.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Turn your keys, sir.
And so the movie, the whole thing is around, okay, a computer replaces people, a computer that's able to learn and make the right decisions, and a computer hacker played by Matthew Broderick, who's just looking for video games, ends up hacking into this computer and accidentally starts the computer, thinking that war is happening. And so the computer is showing on all the screens of all the other computers in the U.S. military that this war is happening, even though it's only in the mind of the computer. And part of how they teach the computer of what to do is through game theory. That using games helps you predict what your opponent is going to do. Strategy, it's basic learning stuff. And so what follows is one of the most iconic movie scenes of the Cold War, where the computer is tasked to use game theory to figure out why you shouldn't start a nuclear war.
Put the list back up.
No, we already tried that.
Put it up.
Yes, put it up.
It's not on the list.
What's not on the list? Go ahead. It's got to be in there somewhere.
Tick, tack, toe.
You're in. Order to disarm the missiles.
No. 5 numbers. It's got half the code.
1. Put X in the center square.
No. up.
There's no way you can win that game.
I know that. It doesn't. It hasn't learned. Is there any way to make it play itself?
Yes, number player 0.
Must be caught in the loop, storing more and more power from the rest of the system.
9 numbers. 10, it's got the code, it's going to launch.
Get me a long status report. Major Dave's get me the president. Yes, sir. How you doing, Colonel?
Sir, all landlines out of the mountain. They're dead. I'm trying to break through on satellites.
Okay.
What's it doing?
It's learning.
Greetings, Professor Falcon.
Hello. Joshua?
Strange game. The only winning move is not to play. How about a nice game of chess?
And so, by tic-tac-toe, of all things, the computer learns that there are games where if you have two knowledgeable opponents, there it will never be a winner. There are only stalemates. And it applies it to nuclear war, that there are no winners. A strange game. The only winning move is not to play. And that sums up nuclear war so well that that is exactly what we must never do. For there are no winners in nuclear war. There are only losers.